I'm always 2 moves ahead. I'm reviewing chess while you're reviewing Yahtzee. Let's talk about Drop.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. So, today we are going to be discussing or debating Drop. But before we get into that, you already know what time it is, movie recommendation time. So, guys, what is the best recent thing you've seen that you want to tell the people?
So I finally got around to watching King Richard. It was actually one that was on my list of things to watch for a while, actually, and managed to catch it the other day. Daniel, this is going to be a big turner for you, but it's a biopic of Serena and Venus Williams' father, and his
That was a
story
good one.
about. It's essentially his story about how we kind of like shaped and molded the two young girls to become the tennis stars that we sort of know and recognize, essentially. And it just touches on different aspects of his character. How disciplined and how on top of them he had to be because of the sort of environment that they grew up in. And again, if you wanted to, if they wanted to make it, they had to sort of be training, repeating, etc. Talks on the struggles of a young black family trying to make it in a predominantly white sport, which was tennis at the time. Just like a bunch of like kind of like other things as well that it kind of goes into how we try to protect them, and how his fear as a parent kind of hindered them or halted their progress at certain stages and stuff like that. So it goes into some of the complexities of him as a father. Of course, as most true biopics do, it doesn't tell the full story, and there's probably bits in there that we aren't seeing, and maybe how tough he was and how disciplined he was on on the kids probably is maybe a little bit watered down in this as well. But growing up seeing Serena's career all throughout, and Venus's career and stuff like that, and then being kind of such popular figures in tennis, it was just kind of good to see and understand, and just get a bit of a sense as to their story and where they came from, and seeing it through their father's eyes, essentially. So, yeah, that's my recommendation.
Me, I watched quite a few things. I watched The Amateur, which was pretty good, which I thought I was going to recommend to you guys, but that's pretty new. So let me try to find something old. I watched also something which I think was pretty good too, was called Cross, on Amazon. It's a pretty much, a detective crime series. The guy's wife ends up getting killed, and then that becomes a whole big mystery, and then there's a serial killer on the loose. And I don't know if the serial killer is the one that killed the wife, but it seems like there's someone else that's involved. It revolves around the mystery of the guy's wife dying. He tries to find out who killed the wife, as well as the serial killer that's killing all these people. And the serial killer that's actually killing all these random people, it's not actually random. They actually look like the serial killer's out killing people that look like previous serial killers. I forgot their names, but yeah, so he's killing people that look like serial killers. And he's a serial. Well, he's not serial. I think serial. I don't. There's a psychopath and a serial killer. Serial killer. How many people do you have to kill to be classified as a serial killer? Does anyone know?
Multiple people. I think he's safe enough to say he's a serial killer in this show.
Okay, cool. But so there's a lot going on. But yeah, that's what the premise mainly revolves around. I'd recommend it. It's good so far.
So I watched Mobland, which is a 2025 UK crime drama.
I saw that.
Essentially a drama about these two London crime families, and the story is told from the point of view of one of the fixers who works for one of these crime families, and essentially they are rivals. An event happens that kind of puts them at odds with each other and puts them on a trajectory of escalations, leading towards an all-out gang war. And it's basically about this fixer's attempts to manage that and prevent it as where he can. And it just doesn't work, and just keeps escalating, and the tensions keep boiling over. It's pretty good. It's exactly what you would expect a crime drama to be like, but it's pretty solid and pretty competent in what it does.
Yeah, I saw a trailer to that. That looks pretty decent. I'm gonna check that out as well. Thank you.
So it's got 10 episodes, and so far 3 are out, and that's what I've watched. And so far it's pretty compelling.
All right. Well, guys, it's time for the main event. Daniel, can you please give a quick synopsis on the movie Drop for those who do not know what the hell the film's about?
So Drop is a thriller movie about this woman who for the first time in years goes on a date, and everything goes pretty well until she begins receiving anonymous messages, and it turns out that she is being blackmailed, where somebody has taken her son hostage, and if she doesn't follow the kidnapper's instructions and kill her date, they will kill her son. And so the movie is essentially her attempt to kind of navigate this, because she doesn't want to kill him because he seems to be a nice guy, and it's basically this thriller situation where she has to kind of try to play along for just long enough to come up with a way to get out of it, and and the movie kind of unfolds from there. So what did we think of Drop?
Let me start off by saying I really liked the central premise of the film. That's always going to be a tension builder, and I love tension builder films. And I liked how there were, it was pretty much going to be, there was always going to be like several suspects, and obviously there was going to be mysteries around that. So that was pretty much what I was expecting. So I liked that as well. However, I think it was a good film to watch on a Saturday evening, do you know what I'm saying? So it was cool. I didn't expect much to happen, especially from watching the trailer, and I think pretty much the trailer did do the film justice. You pretty much got what you expected from watching the trailer. Overall, it was cool. Like I said, the central premise was something like, I love these type of movies when it comes, you know what I'm saying? I love these type of movies with that central premise. Not that specific one, but premises like this, right? Storylines like this. So overall, I'd say I had a cool experience. It just is, let's just say it's not a classic. That's why I think I just had an okay experience watching this, or all right, good experience watching this, because it wasn't really anything out of the blue, which I wasn't expecting. There wasn't really anything which was like a wow moment.
This is actually one of my favorites of the year so far.
Wow!
We've had good movies so far this year. Not to say we've had good movies this year so far, but I think what really worked for me, again, you mentioned about the whole premise. I was like super on board with it. It kept me guessing, kept me on my toes as to who the killer could possibly be, and I was very much on the journey with the character. And I think the reason I probably enjoyed it as much is because I was invested in the characters, invested in this date that they were both on. I think if you think too hard about it, the situation's very implausible. It's not sort of realistic, and there's probably a few plot holes in here in this movie as well, where you're kind of questioning how certain things played out essentially. But yeah, I don't know. I just find myself like really intrigued by it every time she was getting an airdrop. Every time she was kind of like being threatened some more. Every time that she was like, under pressure. Should she do it? Should she not? This, any of that. I was just like very much on that ride with her. So yeah, it's probably not the most perfect movie. It's probably not the best movie, but I think you touched on it as well. It's just that experience in the cinema, that experience of sort of kind of like watching the movie, seeing how things unfolded, was just like a good fun ride to be on.
Yeah, so for me, this might be my favorite phone booth ripoff of the year so far.
What the hell's going on today? It looks like we're going to be clashing. Actually, no, we're not going to be clashing. Sorry, carry on.
Well, I mean, in fairness, there haven't been that many, right? But no, but this is clearly phone booth, but in a world in which phone booths don't exist anymore, right? So I think the overall, I enjoyed it quite a bit. The suspense is done really well. I think the main character is likable. She's also the only one. Like, everybody else is pretty insufferable, which is, I think, the movie's biggest flaw. I think the scheme of the blackmailers mostly hangs together. Like, you can probably nitpick it, and if you really do a deep dive, you can probably find things that don't quite work. But I think it incorporates like modern technology fairly well. I think the ending is probably the weakest part, where they kind of break the formula a little bit, and it turns into a different kind of movie, which wasn't terrible, but I don't think worked especially well. But it's okay. It's also, the entire thing is also an allegory for abusive relationships and having survived them. And I think unlike most movies this year like this, the metaphor is actually really well constructed. It works in most places. It's like one or two smaller places where you can maybe quibble a little bit, but overall it's a really competently constructed movie that is about something and has something to say about its subject matter. So overall, I quite enjoyed it.
I'm trying to see this movie in the same lens that you guys are seeing. Like, what am I missing that's made you both feel like this movie is way better than what I think it was? Because I see the allegories, I see the themes, I see it, but I think the way that it was shot, and it just, there wasn't like any like plot twist, for example, which had me surprised. And I think that's a lot and I think that's what like films like this, I think that's kind of like what it's banking on. Not the main thing that it's banking on, but that's one of the biggest things that a lot of people look for when it comes to these type of films. So, what about this film did you guys like so much that I'm missing?
So I think the suspense works. Like this whole cat and mouse game between her and the voice in her ear. The way she's kind of trying to appear as if everything is fine. The way she's kind of try to find a way out, but at the same time, she doesn't want to push it too hard because that might lead to backlash. Her kind of quiet desperation and panic and kind of flailing around trying stuff and it doesn't work, and then she tries something else and then she has to backtrack because she got caught, and like that entire back and forth I think works quite well. I think that's the strongest part of the movie.
Okay, so at first when I saw scenes like that, right, when she was trying to outmaneuver the guy that was controlling her, at first I thought it was a bit inconsistent because I said to myself, he can see that you're, even though he can see that you are not listening to what he's telling you to do, isn't that like a flaw? Because if that was anyone else, not even if that was anyone else, that should have led to your son dying. However, straight away, because obviously he's clearly someone that means business. However, when after thinking about this, I was like, okay, so that that showed that he really does need her. So in a way, he's bluffing, but he's not bluffing, if that makes sense. So this is kind of like his last resort. So I will say that's something which I did like about the film. In terms of like building suspense and stuff, I do hear it, but other films build suspense as well. I just don't.
Yeah.
I
wasn't watching them. I was watching this, and I was having a good time. Like if it's this or Phone Booth or
Carry On.
Carry On was worse, I thought.
Yeah, Carry On was worse. That was worse. Yeah.
So if it's a choice between Phone Booth and this, then Phone Booth wins. If it's a choice between this and Carry On, then this wins. And give me like an average Hitchcock movie, then that wins, right? So this is not the best. Like I'm not saying this is a masterpiece, right? This is not the best movie of the year. I'm just saying it's good.
Yeah. Okay, I can agree with that.
It's like Daniel said, it's in terms of like the suspense and the tension, etc. It was like all done really well, and that was like the main thing of the movie. The main thing of the movie is meant to make you feel those things. It's meant to make you feel how the character's feeling in those particular moments. And for me, again, when she's set across the day and she has to stop letting him know that she's receiving these airdrops that are progressively getting worse for her, and she's progressively having to do worse things. She's progressively getting threatened some more. It's like you're feeling the pressure that she's under. You're feeling some of the tension, and you're feeling the nervousness. And again, because the other person seems like such a genuine person, such a nice person, you don't want her to do these things. So you're on this ride with her where you're also trying to get out with her. I'm trying to see how she gets from underneath this guy's thumb in the movie. So that's what I was like really gelling with. That's what I was really vibing with in the movie. And like I think you said it was predictable or something like that. I don't think it was. Like I was genuinely unsure for majority of the movie who the person was or who the character was that was actually.
Did I say predictable?
I don't know. I can't remember if you said.
I said that. My bad. My bad.
Yeah, but I genuinely, for a large part of the movie, had no clue who was behind this. So again, it adds to the paranoia, adds to, the threat and the danger that she was in. And like I said, as long as you have a character that I can get behind, and her story wasn't super compelling, but her story was something that you can understand and you can relate to. This is a woman that has survived a very abusive relationship, and you get to find out that her ex-husband shot himself in front of her, and because of that she became a bit of a recluse. She didn't go on dates. Her life became about work and her kid, and this is like the first time that she's actually stepping out into a date for the first time. You can feel her nervousness. You can feel even down to her dress sense, how she dressed for that particular first date, and you had her sister having to come in and actually correct and get a change, because you could kind of see that she was like, when I first saw her, I was like, you dressed for work, not a date, essentially. But that's all she knows, and that's probably all she had in the wardrobe was things that were just kind of like work related and nothing to kind of attract men. So yeah, it's just like it was simple. It was simple, and it was done well in my eyes. And I think you guys were mentioning about the guy that was airdropping her and what was kind of like believable or not. I can't remember if you touched on that, but the only time that I didn't believe it, or like when it was revealed at the end, I was a bit like, when you look at that scene, it doesn't quite make sense, was when she was in the bathroom, because everywhere else in the restaurant, you can say that there's cameras and he's like planted bugs around the restaurant, etc. So he can, hear her conversation and he can see what's going on, and he's conveniently picked the one seat that's not in camera view. In the bathroom, there wouldn't be a camera. And even if there was a little mic that he planted in there, when she's trying to write on her hand, asking for help, he shouldn't be aware of that. He shouldn't really be aware of what's happening there. To be honest, so I think that's the only time I'm gonna be like, what you're doing there isn't consistent.
Yeah, I think a whole bunch of those details probably don't quite hold up on rewatch. I have a feeling it doesn't try very hard to exactly define the rules, right? I think a movie like this lives from kind of like we set up rules, and then and what's satisfying is to watch a character kind of outsmart the rules, right? Because like the blackmailer has put those cameras and microphones in certain places and can't really change them, and so she has to try to outsmart him, right? And she tries, right, with the piano player. And I think I didn't quite get just how they caught him, because he seemed to be uninvolved, right? They ended up killing him, right? But I think it was just a chance that he tried to pay with this $20 bill that she wrote a message on. Like that should have worked probably. Like if he only had looked at the note, probably would have, right? So that seemed a little bit like leaning on the scales a little bit.
But the piano player was in. He was in on it as well, as in like he was trying to save her son. No, he was trying to save her son.
He was an innocent bystander, and she gave him a tip, and she had written on the note, on the dollar bill, she had written basically help. Right?
But he got a call. There was a scene that showed that where he got a call and he says, "If you want to save her son."
Right, that's what I mean. That she reaches out to him for help. He sees it, tries to help, and then is essentially blackmailed. Right? He gets a phone call from a blackmailer saying, "If you do this, her kid dies," and then he hangs up. And then they also poison him, and I'm not entirely sure why they did both. Shouldn't one of the two have been enough?
It was collateral damage, I assume, because he wasn't supposed to be involved.
He was a loose end, right? But yeah, but that one was maybe a little bit flimsy. But other places work quite well. I like the one where she's trying to reach out to this helpline, right? And she almost gets there, and then she realizes she's being watched because there's a camera in the reception, right? So like, most of it works, I think.
So since we're talking about suspects, right? We're on the topic of suspects. How well do you think that this film managed to kind of like keep you guessing about the identity of the tormentor?
I didn't quite like the reveal because I don't think there were any clues that. So the actual bad guy is.
I wasn't expecting him though. That's something which I'll give the film. I wasn't expecting him to be the guy.
Yeah. So there's this guy Richard, right? So who is ostensibly on a first date, and they kind of run into each other, and we later realized that this was a staged encounter, right? And he basically like used a real date as a cover to kind of keep an eye on her, so that he could basically react to what she's doing, and send the airdrops. And he seems to be a nice guy who's just in over his head, and he's struggling with a first date the same way she's struggling with a first date, right? And then it turns out that he's the blackmailer, and he just turns into like a mustache twirling villain in the last 5 minutes. And I don't know that works. So first of all, this whole like building a rapport with her, I don't think that really had an impact, right? Because they cloned her phone before that, right? So I don't see really a point in like them talking and him kind of trying to connect with her.
Mm.
Am I wrong?
I hear what you're saying. I think I have a more
how did it fit into their plan to kind of have them make a contact like this? Shouldn't he just got on a table, not interact with anybody, just watch her and send these airdrops? Like, why go through this whole shtick other than to mess with the audience?
I think also they were trying to reinforce the whole domestic violence scene, because the whole nice guy, how nice guys aren't really nice guys. So I think that's what they were trying to do, like with his introduction and just with pretty much his incorporation into the film.
Could be, yeah.
I can see that. Yeah, but I think I agree with Daniel. Is that I do feel like he has to be shown, because he then becomes one of the suspects that we have for the movie. but it has to be done in a way where it intentionally feeds into the story properly, where it makes sense. And like Daniel said, is that logically speaking, he didn't really need to speak to her at that point. So again, unless they were going to make him clone a phone, in that particular scene, or distract her whilst it was happening, or something like along the lines, it didn't on the story wise, it didn't make sense as to why he would do that, or why he would get involved with speaking with her.
And he's not the one who cloned her phone, right? Like she bumps into a guy right at the entrance of the restaurant, and I thought it was pretty clear that that's why they cloned her phone. I don't know how it works. I don't know if like half a second of contact is enough, or if you kind of need kind of access to the phone for a bit. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but it seemed to be like, so I was watching it. It was immediately clear. Oh, that's a clue. Like this is not just an accident, right? So it seems to either that's the case or it's a fake out, and I'm not sure which is less interesting. And then there's also this other guy who's apparently waiting for his sister, and he's just kind of weird, and he's always on his phone. So he could be the guy, and she confronts him, and he kind of like he's the only kind of really rational person in all of this, where he just like a crazy person walks up to him and accuses him of random things without context, and kind of just deflects her. And it turns out that he's innocent. He really is some guy waiting for his sister, right? And that is why he's hanging out in that seating area the entire time, and that's why he's always on his phone. And all of those things make him look guilty. So I think there's a bunch of fake outs here, but no clue. I don't think. I don't think there's a puzzle here you can solve as you're watching it.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of kind of clues, how do you guys feel when a plan is said, told? At the end where the villain, not the villain, but the antagonist will always say how he executed the plan. How do you guys feel about that? Do you think movies should kind of do that approach, or it should be on a different approach where the audience figures out how the plan was done?
I think to do it well, you need to actually put the clues in the movie, and then the movie kind of explains to you what you missed.
So you need an explanation.
Yes, but the clues have to be there.
But I'm swear there's been I'm right. So Parasite, I don't fully remember it, right? As I remember bits, but I swear in Parasite, we the audience had to figure out what was going on. So that's kind of what I'm getting at, like a film like that, right, where the audience kind of have to figure out. For me, because I found that more just fun to watch, more engaging, because it kind of keeps your brain ticking. Whereas at the end, it kind of, I think that's where it not spoiled it for me. It's just the way he was telling us what he did was okay, you weren't really smart enough to kind of show that rather than tell us. So I was just kind of wondering what you guys are thinking. But for you, you're saying you need you don't need an explanation, but you're saying it's good to have an explanation.
I want an explanation, and it also needs to be solvable. That's my thing.
Okay.
And I don't think that was the case here.
I see.
Right. And it doesn't help again when the villain, like Daniel said, is just a mustache twirling villain, and he's just kind of reeling off what what his grand plan was in some eccentric way. It doesn't really add anything. And I think the most egregious version of that was in Spider-Man Far From Home, when Mysterio goes on that really long spiel, shit toasting everyone. So it kind of falls along the same vein of over explaining without properly kind of laying down foundations, and without properly laying down the clues and the ideas as to who it was and why it happened the way it happened, and why her.
And I don't think we learned that much in his monologue, right? We know why they're trying to kill Henry, right? The date. Mm-hmm. Because he has evidence of the mayor's wrongdoings, and he's about to talk to the FBI. And we already knew that by the time the big reveal comes. You realize that they found her because they've been kind of on this dating app for months, right? So they know about the interaction. I think the one piece of new information is that she was charged with killing her husband and was acquitted. And so that makes her look guilty when another guy she's involved with dies. And that's why she's a good setup, and a good target. I think that's new. And I don't think any of that is all that compelling. It's not like we got a whole bunch of different pieces and now they all come together. It's kind of a little bit like exposition dump, a little bit. And then the thing at the very end is that she wins, just by poisoning his dessert, right? And there's a whole thing about her husband used to take her to not this restaurant but another restaurant like it, and he would always eat the same dessert, and he would kind of gloat, or kind of that would be kind of part of his humiliation ritual to kind of gaslight her into kind of taking him back, right? And so there's a parallel there, but I don't see how that kind of really says much about the blackmailer. And then she basically kind of just gets him to gloat to Henry, and then while he's not looking, she puts the poison in her, like in his dessert. And that's it. She doesn't really outsmart him. She gets him to not look for 2 seconds. And that's how she wins. Is that satisfying?
Not entirely.
But at the same time, to give it the benefit of the doubt, she's kind of, learning as she goes. Remember, she's a widow. She's a mother, so she's not really like this,
She's not a spy. She's not a trained agent,
Exactly.
right? But like as a movie, as a story, wouldn't it be more satisfying if there was some moment of triumph where she just overcomes some big obstacle? Because the like that kind of leads into the allegory aspect of this, right? So this entire thing is allegory for for an abusive relationship, right?
Mhm.
So she was in a literal abusive relationship. It almost got her and her son killed, and it only ended because the husband killed himself. And basically, since then, she's not dated, right? She's not had relationships. Now she goes on this date, and there's a figurative abusive relationship, right? Because the entire dynamic of how that evening plays out is allegorical for an abusive relationship, right? So there are friendly appearances, right? Everybody is hyper polite and friendly and forthcoming and helpful, but it's all fake, right? Like under the surface, there's other stuff going on that nobody's allowed to see. She is constantly making excuses for other people's behavior, right? That's also one thing that happens in abusive relationships. What else? Like she's being blamed for other people's actions, right? And apologizes for them. So there's a whole bunch of different stuff here, right? Like that is entirely allegorical, right? And every time like somebody tries to help, she basically has to kind of deflect them and kind of lie to cover. So like the entire thing is very overtly allegorical for an abusive relationship, right?
Mhm.
And for me, that after the suspense, that was probably the strongest part of the movie, because I think you can find like one or two different places where it doesn't quite work, but most of the time works, right? Where there's I always like kind of like this in movies where there's an idea that's expressed in a few different levels. One of them is literal, and the others are allegorical. So here you've got a literal abusive relationship, and then you've got the allegorical abusive relationship, which is how she has to behave in order to survive the threat of the blackmailer, right? Which is not an emotional relationship, but it replicates the dynamics of one, right? And everything that happens, we can kind of find an analog to how people who are trying to survive in a abusive relationship behave.
Yeah. I definitely will agree. Also, like it shows that they definitely did kind of like not even kind of, they did follow with the theme, because like she was at the mercy of her abuser, and she finally fought back at the end. So it was definitely a resolution which a lot of people, it's a serious topic, so it was definitely a resolution which I think a lot of people find satisfying. But I don't think a lot of people will actually catch on that, oh, okay, this still follows the theme.
And my one big criticism is that the way she saves the day in the end does not map to overcoming an abusive relationship.
I think the reason why they didn't do that is because it still has to kind of fit the thriller narrative. Because remember, it's still fictional at the end of the day. So
Yeah, but I mean, you could have like I don't have a strong opinion on what exactly it should be, but essentially this whole like tricking him with the poison is a bit lame, and I don't think it really maps
I
to
didn't
how
mind it
somebody
that
would get
much.
out of a situation like this, right?
I don't think I
we,
minded it as much as you did. I thought it was like, oh, okay, cool. Like for me, it felt like he finally thought that he was going to win, but she was just one step ahead, and finally, I don't know, finally figured out how to trick him. I agree, like the whole stuff about her mentioning about her husband always liked to sort of not have the dessert and gluten, this that, and the other. I feel like that was like very unnecessary, and that was like um very stupid, but. Do you know what I really liked in that moment was the look that Henry gave her and the look between the two of them for him to acknowledge that this person was the one that was like sending the airdrops, and for him to sort of finally understand kind of what was happening. and for him to have that level of trust of like, no, you can take this shot. Basically, I like that moment in that scene as well. So for me, it wasn't as bad as you kind of see it, but I know everyone's got their own taste.
It's more like they lose sight of the allegory, right? And if that's such a big part of the movie, why is that not the punchline? Why is that not how she wins in the end? And I'm not entirely sure what that is, because I don't think there's like really a like archetypical way of getting out of an abusive relationship, other than there's a chance and you take it and it works or it doesn't, right? That's kind of how it seems to be. There's one way in which like he constantly underestimates her, and I think that is also something that is part of the allegory, like where he simply doesn't think she can outsmart him. Not sure why he thinks that, because it's not like she's a smart person, right? And she's been trying to outsmart him the entire time, and maybe after it failed so many times, he just stopped taking it seriously or something. But I think that's also part of the allegory. But it's more like, especially this, like, first of all, the thing about the poison, not great, and then when it turns into Die Hard in the last 5 minutes, also not the best part. Like when like this whole car chase, and when she goes home and like wins a gunfight with a kidnapper, and the sister survives like just a bullet just to the shoulder, and she's fine basically, and can still drop one-liners, after being shot and stuff like that. There was this one thing where it felt like they were trying to do some parallelism, where the first time around she didn't fight back against her husband because he was threatening her son, or their son, right? And so she was afraid that if she pushed back too much, he would hurt the son. And now, again, the son is what gets her compliance, right? But then the son actually helps by driving the gun to her in this toy car, which is a cheesy moment, kind of stupid, but also thematically, he stops being a liability and becomes an ally, right?
Yeah, I think it's a bit harsh. Listen to me, like, I hear what you say. You're right. You're right. It's just the way that you said it. It's just the way that you said it was a bit funny. But yeah,
Right.
you're right.
But that's basically what's going on here. I don't know that it entirely works, but I can see what they were doing,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with the attempt. It's more like, while you are constructing this allegory that otherwise works so well, why are you not constructing an ending that kind of goes out on a high note, right?
Yeah.
So that's just mostly my thing.
To defend him, it's like,
Who?
what could it have been?
The
Like
son,
what
the blackmailer.
the blackmail and escaping the abusive relationship, and how you do it. Again, typically, well, I wouldn't even say typically, because I've never been in that situation, but the only way to really escape it is to leave, and to kind of like not turn back.
Just wait for a chance, and you take it and hope it works.
Pretty much. And I feel like she took a chance. I feel like she had one chance at the moment.
I was gonna say that theme is consistent throughout, because whenever she saw a chance, she took it. So yeah,
Yeah, and that was like the last chance he had, where he felt like he was getting what he wanted the entire time. She took that opportunity. She took that moment of him kind of letting his guard down, and him thinking that him underestimating her, and used it to kill him. So I kind of feel like, to kind of defend the writers on this, I don't know how else you could have maybe done it, or it definitely could have been the whole interaction between her and the villain in this movie. I feel like the whole dynamic could have been better once they kind of became face to face. But yeah, I don't know how else they could have had her escape that situation. Pretty much.
Yeah, and I don't have a good pitch. It's more like it's not the strongest point.
Yeah, and I feel like you probably feel like that more just because of how the scene played out beforehand as well. And I feel like that probably deflated the whole experience, and it probably deflated the whole suspension and the tension that was building up throughout the whole movie. And then at that point, it kind of felt a little bit like luster, and it kind of felt a bit, whatever. And again, I will agree with you. Once it becomes an action movie, at the end of the movie, you're like, okay, cool. Like it's time to wrap this up. Don't spend too much time here, please.
Question. Well, 2 questions, 2 in 1. So,
one question in 27 parts.
Right, Daniel's full of jokes today. So 2 1 questions. So the film. What do you feel about the film's commentary on modern day and technology, and just societal issues? Also, do you think they had anything more to say about the dating scene besides domestic violence? Because I feel like there was more that they were trying to be said, but I might have missed it.
So, like, one thing they do is they complain about the apps, right? About how, I don't think they call it dehumanizing, but it's like, it's not a dignified process, right?
Hmm.
And she's like, she's on her guard about, yeah, like what kind of guy Henry might be. Until the blackmail really starts, she's kind of like waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Because he can't possibly be that nice, and it turns out, yes, he's a saint. I'm not sure it says very much other than that about dating.
However,
Not
you got
really.
anything?
Yeah. No, not really. Not really. I think it just kind of, highlights it. But like at best, it's highlighting the difficulties of getting back out there. Once you're in a position where, you've kind of gone through life, you've maybe had like a marriage, a kid, and this that, and the other, and like it's not gone well. Kind of speaks to all. I wouldn't even say speaks to. It just kind of shows it in this movie, but I don't think there's anything really profound there, to be honest.
Mm.
So
And I don't think that's the point of the movie. It's more
yeah,
like it's
exactly.
difficult to do that when you're not used to it, and when you're not the kind of person for whom this comes easy, right? Then it's
Yeah.
a pretty intimidating and demoralizing thing. That's kind of in there, but that's not the point of the story, right?
My biggest problem with this movie is Henry, to be honest, and not anything
Yeah.
that he
Henry?
does. He's the reason why all of this happened because he didn't prioritize. Like, why are you on a date if you're about to out the mayor, if you're about to sort of blow the whistle? Why are you on dating apps and why are you on dates?
The same
You
day as
clearly
well.
you clearly do not have your priorities set straight. So he's the biggest problem in this movie, and he should have died for that reason, for not having the priorities right.
I see you are Henry and race you the entire cast
Oh
But
god.
to be
because
fair,
they're all terrible.
You
to
think
be
I
fair,
didn't mind the sister. I didn't mind the sister. She added like a nice little
Yeah,
something.
sorry
Just like
guys.
she's more
a little
sister.
bit annoying, but she's the lesser evil. What's the guy's name? The Matt, the waiter, is the worst.
Oh, I loved him. Oh, no way. No way. No way.
He was funny.
I was uncomfortable just watching him. Like first of all, that's my cultural bias. To me, all American waiters are like this because they're way
Mhm.
too friendly, way too overbearing. Try to be your friend when really you just wanna place your order. But yeah, he's like just way too much, right?
Just quickly kind of piggyback what you guys said of Henry, yeah. I think that is, in terms of why he would do that, I think that's kind of like a reflection of men in the dating scene. It's not necessarily desperation, but I think the reason why he did that, because when you're talking to a girl, you kind of want to like secure that date before she moves on, because that's how women are, right? That's just how the climate is. Like they got so many options, they could just move on whenever they want to. So I think that kind of does reinforce the. I don't want to use the word desperation, but the state of man, that how they will literally drop everything just for that girl, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So you're right. Like he had flipping, like he was about to out the mayor. So the dangers that come with that is crazy. But yet he still goes on a date with this woman. So it's like that kind of does it kind of does reinforce what the dating scene is like, especially for men that like they're not desperate, but they are kind of desperate in a way, if that makes sense.
He also comes across as really insincere because of how excessively nice he is.
Yeah.
He's kind of like the perfect gentleman. He's got infinite patience, infinite understanding. Just he gives her so much space. Like he's basically on Mars, right? Like it's incredible. Even after he logically should have walked multiple times over, he's still around. When he finally has enough, all it takes to reset him is a kiss, right? Like that when that should be more of a red flag, right? So I'm not sure that's a flaw in the movie exactly, but it just seemed a little bit implausible. Like the plausibility of the entire thing kind of suffered a little bit because just how flawless the guy was.
That could have fed into the whole, domestic violence aspect of it because again, people portray themselves to be sort of this perfect version or this like super nice version, and then underneath that there's like these like potential like dark secrets, and I feel like the movie could have maybe potentially fed into that a little bit. I know he was a potential suspect in this as well, but it could have fed into that a little bit more in terms of playing with this flawless character and sort of trying to uncover sort of whether he sort of had any demons underneath or any sort of kind of secrets that he was like potentially keeping, which could have potentially made him a red flag, but no, he's still a nice guy, and like there are maybe still nice guys out there, and you just kind of have to try and, I don't know, find the right one or something like that. I don't know, but
yeah. Like if anything, he's kind of the example of how sometimes a nice guy is just a nice guy,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, he comes across as threatening because of how non-threatening he is.
Yeah.
Moving on from Henry to the rest of the cast, like we already talked about the waiter, but everybody is really one note, really over
I
the
think they
top.
all each serve a purpose, the way that they were
And
presented.
I mean, I think it ties into something a little bit where this entire setting is fake, right? Like in the sense of like she's putting on a performance, and so is everybody else,
Mm.
and you can't really know who is genuine and who isn't, and you can't tell who the real threat is because everybody is being so super nice,
Mm. Mm.
right? Like I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just bad writing. I think it's partially intentional. It's laying it on so thick that it becomes obnoxious.
But that's what I meant about serving a purpose. I meant as in like each character was meant to be a specific character, as in one was supposed to be the nice one was supposed to be like for example the female waiter, she was like the support, if that makes sense. So she was like a human embodiment of support. Another one was like a human embodiment of eagerness in a way, as in like the waiter, the one that was kind of, because obviously the film was mainly, it was revolved mainly like in one location in the restaurant, so it kind of gave you already that claustrophobic, especially it was so high, you know, I don't know how many stories it was, but it was, you know what I'm saying, it was high in it, so it kind of fit well with the whole domestic violence. Each character still, and so even each character, the way that when you say they laid it on so thick, that was intentional, because each character's still falls in line with the theme of domestic violence. One's more like one's more like a support system. Another one's more like very tense, like tense in your face, builds onto the whole claustrophobic element of things, which falls into the feelings of domestic violence as well. So there was so I agree. It was definitely laid on thick.
And it's also the people who notice that something is going on and they just don't want anything to do with it. They just want to keep having a good time.
Yeah.
Which is those teenagers who are apparently on their way to prom or something, and she reaches out to two of them in the bathroom, and they just want to be away from her.
To defend the waiter in this, the reason I actually didn't mind him and I actually kind of found him quite funny is
there's no defending that.
Yeah. I didn't have an issue with him.
His character it's just funny because I think it's like the relatability of like, you could be at dinner and you could be having like a difficult conversation. It could be like, whatever, like whatever's happening at your table should feel like it's like, this kind of conversation between like you and this other person, or like you and like, many or whatever. And it might not be going great, like it was in this movie where like it's a tense situation. It's the first day, she's been blackmailed, this, that, and the other. It's just not perfect. And then you're just presented with like the most eager, over nice sort of waiter that's doing too much, talking too much, this, that, and the other. That's completely a juxtaposition, completely a different, a different tone to what's actually happening at the dinner table. And I felt like I could relate to it. Like I could see the humor in it, basically, but from that, which is why I was like, oh, okay, Matt's like a representation of that, and I didn't mind him too much because of that.
And it was his first day, number one. So it does, and it still kind of does fall in line with everything in terms of like the fake persona that you give off on the first meet with domestic violence as well, because that was his first day. So he was trying to impress. So I'm sure maybe that is his actual personality, but it still kind of falls in line with what
that was actually his last day. If Daniel had anything to do with it, it was his first and his last day. He would have
I see. But yeah, I enjoyed him. I enjoyed him, Daniel.
I've been in restaurants where waiters were like this. It's
Yeah.
just so uncomfortable.
It is.
It's also kind of rude, right? Like people are not there to chat to you.
Yeah.
Have their meal.
That is so German of you.
So I grew up in China, right? Spent 5 years of my life in China, and in China, waiters, their job is just to take your order and bring your food. They're not entertaining you, right? And some years ago, I was in a Chinese restaurant in China with some friends, one of whom was Chinese, and my parents, right? And a waitress brought like a dish, and my mother thanked the waitress, and the waitress just looked to my Chinese friend with panic in her eyes. She's like, what is this foreign? What does this foreigner want from me? And then she explained, no, in the West they do this. Just play along. So it's the complete opposite.
I remember
One
that stuff.
thing, yeah. I was gonna say one thing I did wanna bring up, and I was trying to sit and think about what it meant in the movie. But very much so in when they're having their dinner, the whole like backdrop is of like these this city skyline. It's all like lit up. They're in this like really nice like ambiance like restaurant. And then it felt like the movie was very intentionally in the hospital scene, putting them up against a regular like backdrop of like a regular skyline of just like regular apartments and this and the other, and it was like quite there. It was like the window was like quite big, so you can see some of the backdrop of it. And I was like thinking, what could that possibly in terms of like tying into some of the theme? Obviously, I don't think it relates too much to some of the domestic violence in this, but tying into the theme of putting on like fake personas and sort of trying to put your best foot forward and this and the other. I was trying to like piece it together, and it might not mean nothing at all, but it's just something that I picked up on in the movie is that for the majority of the day you had this like nice ambiance, city skylines, this that, and the other. Everything was like all pretty and glitzy and this that, and the other, and then in the hospital scene it was just kind of more real life and more realistic, and it felt like that was like maybe that was also the first time that she was actually properly being normal to him as well, and it felt like it was like the real world. It was like her real self, and him being his real self, and everything around them was not as fake and not as sort of kind of put on as it was in the hospital scene. And I don't know, maybe I'm like kind of like reading too much into it, but I don't know, did you guys see that, pick up on that, or does it do you think it means anything?
I didn't pick up on that, but let's read too much into it together. So I could even add more to this. In the beginning of the movie, she's working from home, and she's just finished this therapy call, right? And there's just some guy knocking on her window, and she's startled by it, right? Because there's some guy at her window looking in, and it's the guy from the electric company trying to read a meter, right? Which is like the first time like a male character was like presented as a threat in this, right? So kind of setting the stage of this whole idea of she's unable to trust people, and has good reasons for not being able to trust them. So in that one, she's at ground level, and there's kind of a danger there, right? Or at least danger can come in. And then when she's in the restaurant, she's far high above everything else. Everything looks very pretty, but the danger is hidden. It's kind of behind the scenes, right? It's invisible. And then towards the end, the window actually gets broken, and it almost kills her, right? Because there's this gust of wind, and she gets sucked out and stuff like that, right? And then at the end, she's probably on the third floor, and I don't quite remember what the scenery was, but I think it's like just a normal skyline, right?
Mm-hmm. Just like
Pretty
apartments and
much.
stuff, yeah, just
Yeah.
apartments.
So it's like normal,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to like put a gun to my head, make me sit, my high school exams again, having to interpret this, I would say something like the view is how you see the rest of the world, and throughout the movie, her view changes depending on what kind of situation she's in. In the first one, it all seems very safe and domestic, but there's danger around the corner, right? It could come out at any moment. And then she's in an artificial environment where everything looks nice and safe and clean and it's like glamorous, but there's danger behind every corner, and like the whole thing is tainted. And then towards the end, she's in a more genuine place, a place of healing, and a place where her view is just normal life. How's that?
A
Works.
star.
It works.
It works. It's done. How it got done? You just made it up now, Daniel?
Well, you just run with it.
Flipping out, mate. Alright, well, guys, final thoughts.
The first movie this year, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I can't, like, everything's been so forgettable so far this year. The first movie where the premise is, really good. I feel like it handled its topics and themes quite well in this. Had very good suspension, had very good tension build up in this movie. Likeable protagonists in this movie that brought you along on the journey with them. Stories sort of serviceable enough, and again, this is kind of what I ask in a lot of these movies, is just have a serviceable enough story. Like, have a story that just makes sense. It doesn't need to wow. It doesn't need to shine every single time. It just needs to do what it needs to do. And in this movie, it does that. So for that reason, I will give it a solid 7 out of 10.
Let me just make one thing clear. I had a decent good time in this film. Let me, say that one more time. It may seem like I didn't, the way that I was very surprised at the way that you're reacting. I was genuinely surprised by the way that you're reacting. I thought it was a 6 if we're gonna rate it experience. So when you guys were saying I was one of the, it was one of the best movies. Well, I would say it's one of the best movies this year, and then obviously Daniel says it's one of the best phone booths that you've seen so far. I was like, oh, okay, damn, I wasn't
I
expecting
said it
that.
was the best phone booth rip-off this year so far.
Oh, okay, rip off. Sorry, apologies. Okay, cool. But yeah. So I was thinking, okay, damn. After having this conversation, it's definitely made me see this film in a better light. I'm still going to stand by the rating I gave it. It was a 6 out of 10, above average. So it's good. A 6 is a good. So yeah, I had a good experience with this overall. I liked it. I liked the themes. I loved the premise. I just think maybe it was the style that I didn't really, in terms of like the way that it was shot. Maybe when I say the way that it was shot, because obviously the director, he's done films like Happy Death Day and Freaky, so it's like maybe it's just his style that I might have an issue with. I'm not too sure. I don't know, but overall, I had a good time. So it wasn't a bad film. So I had a good time. So yeah, man, I gave it that 6 out of 10.
So I think there's a whole bunch to like about this movie. The suspense works. The main character is likable. The others not so much. The metaphor works more often than not. So I don't regret having watched this. This is not a masterpiece, but it's pretty good. It's definitely worth seeing. So I give this a Yahtzee out of chess.
All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning into today's episode. Hey.
I mean, if you made it this far, appreciate you, appreciate the support. Of course, if you liked everything that we discussed today, tell a friend. And if you hated everything that we discussed today and you thought we were just chatting a bunch of crap, tell an enemy. We are the Eye of the Storm podcast.
You heard it here first, guys. We'll see you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.